Hey, so Make It Stick, page 104, says, reading an excerpt from the bottom, we are readily misled by illusions, cognitive bias, and the stories we construct to explain the world around us, and our place within it. As I was reading that, something really stuck out to me, that we are misled by illusions, our own ideas of what things are around us versus what is actually happening around us. Some of it is projection, some of it is stories from others that we have taken on that is actually not even a part of our own realities, but we have allowed to influence us in ways that affects our realities and our perception. Make It Stick, within this this context right here, and then going further down, it says on page 105, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel, I may say this name wrong, Kahneman. He describes two systems for processing or thinking. And the first system is the unconscious system. The second is the controlled system. I thought it was very interesting that the first system would actually be the unconscious versus the conscious, which makes me kind of think through this idea that things that we have embedded within us, deep in our unconscious, is actually more so leading us than the things that are in our conscious minds, which is almost pretty scary if you really think about it. Well, for me, if I'm thinking about this correctly, because when I think of things in order, I'm a person of order, and when I think of things in order, one and then two, for something to be first, the first system, even though the second one is kind of helping navigate that first system, it's still understood that the more primitive, I guess I can say, system, system that is more driving us is that first system, the automatic system. So the unconscious, the intuitive, and kind of that rapid, immediate response is on our first system versus on our second system, which is helping get these things controlled, and it's the slower process in the second system. I think it's interesting because the second system, we think and we assume is what's leading and guiding us. We don't think and we don't give credit that everything that is going on in that first system is actually kind of the driving force for our everything. So, for instance, there is so much in my history, my culture as an African American man, that I've learned over the years, and I don't always think it to be a driving force for things until something happens, until something takes place, and then I realize that even though it's an unconscious bias, it's an unconscious behavior, it's an unconscious thought, it's the thought that is actually in the forefront of my actions. And I think that is very interesting. And the more I think through as I was reading it, the more I thought through and reread these same paragraphs over and over, because it really struck me in a certain way. I realized that it's pretty accurate, that a lot of way I see people, a lot of way I, like even with this situation with the cop, which is a whole nother thing for an African American male of this era. But anyway, when I see people and when people see me, I think the unconscious biases or biased and unconscious behaviors are the things that are in the forefront, even though we don't want to admit that they're there. I tell a lot of people all the time, I actually have at my church, I have a white male that I am training to become a preacher, a minister, and I constantly remind him to check his privilege, based on the context in which of the people in the congregation that we serve. I think that sometimes I notice that his unconscious behaviors are coming forward where he doesn't see them or notice them. I realize that I'm over my time, but I'm gonna wrap it up right here and just say I think it's very interesting to think through this idea of what's actually driving our behaviors. And even though we think that we're smart enough, we're not actually controlling the unconscious as well as we think we are. All right. Hope that worked and will suffice. Cool.